We're live.
Okay, cool. Welcome to WP-Tonic, episode 208. Today we're talking about the Gutenberg editor and how that's going to be rolled into WordPress core very shortly, our thoughts on it, and where WordPress might be going from here.
Yes, John. We had a guest, but they've had to reschedule. But we thought it was a good opportunity to talk about this particular subject, didn't we, John?
Yeah, absolutely. This seems to be something that everybody in WordPress is talking about. This is definitely a big deal. And for those who don't know, this is a change that is definitely coming to WordPress. It is scheduled to drop in WordPress 4.0, which will probably be by the end of the year. And what's going to happen is Gutenberg right now is a plugin that makes changes to the editor. And these are kind of going to be changes that everybody that uses WordPress needs to get used to. So essentially, right now, when you log in, you have your visual and your text editor tabs. A lot of people use the visual editor, and a lot of people use the text editor. They're more on the developmental side. But what this Gutenberg plugin is going to do is it basically is going to mimic more closely the editor style of Medium. So one thing that's changing is you have to create a content block for each paragraph and whatnot, the way that it stands right now. So this may change.
Well, yeah, they're already talking about exploring adding drag and drop and multi-column support for blocks, aren't they?
Yeah, most definitely. This project is changing like
rapidly.
Yeah, to say the least.
To say it's fluid would be an understatement, would it?
Yeah.
I think it fundamentally, as one of our co-hosts on one of our Round Table Friday shows, Morton from Linda stated, I thought they were looking at really improving text, and you got the content area. You got page title, and then you got the classic content area, and we've had the same basic editing methodology for quite a while now, haven't we, John?
Yeah, definitely. And a part of what's driving this change is at the State of the Word last year, Matt Mullenweg said that they were going to focus this year completely on the editor and design and user experience for creators. So a lot of what they're doing is trying to kind of bridge the gap between where WordPress started, which was a blogging platform, and then where content creation is today. And you look at platforms like Squarespace, Wix, Weebly, there are more drag and drop elements. Or you look at Medium, you create like block elements, like say a paragraph here, image here. And what they're trying to do is basically make it easier for people who are used to these tools to use WordPress. That's how I interpret it.
Yeah, that does seem to be the route they're going down, where I originally thought that it was going to really be improvement of the basic text and image editor and utilize some of the methodologies that Medium have been using recently. Not totally copy it, but it in look and style, it has very similar elements, doesn't it, John? But by what Morton said a few weeks ago, their ambition is to build something that is more like a page building functionality in the core WordPress, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Here's a little quote that I want to share from Joost de Valk, who the guy behind the Yoast plugin, the SEO plugin that everyone uses. And this comes from the WordImpress blog. What does Gutenberg mean for plugin authors? And believe me, there's about 20 bazillion articles on Gutenberg right now floating around the WordPress community. But what Yost said is, we love what Gutenberg means for the future of WordPress. The new editor experience comes with some new concepts around the publishing experience. And an example of one of the new concepts discussed for Gutenberg is a pre-publishing workflow that allows for an intermediate step between being done with writing your post and actually having your post published. We're actively thinking about integrating our snippet preview there. The concepts of little blocks also allows for a deep optimization of how we analyze post content, as instead of analyzing the whole thing, we could do it block by block. This also means giving feedback at a block level. So they're really looking at reimagining their plugin because of how the Gutenberg editor, once it's rolled into core, is going to affect the editing experience when you're creating pages and posts on WordPress.
Yeah, it really does. How do you see that? Obviously it's not, I don't know how to frame this. Obviously it's not the best news for the page building plugins, the third party ones at the present moment. Or do you think that's overstating it?
Well, I think, and again, we've had this discussion on the panel a couple times where everybody interacts with WordPress a little bit differently. Some people use WordPress out of the box, and they just use the default text and visual editor, which is like Microsoft Word. And some people use ACF fields to build a site. Some people use a page builder like Beaver Builder, Elementor, or Conductor to build a page. And then some people just use a premium theme that they bought from somewhere like Envato. So everybody interacts with it differently. But what this is going to do, basically, they're adding a new part to core where there's comment blocks that if you look at the source code for these things right now, it's basically each block there is like comments, like HTML comments around it. So each little block will be its own part. But I do think overall that this will help. This is a step that they need to take if they want to grow market share from 27% to the 50% mark that I imagine that they're going for.
Yeah, definitely. If they really want that growth, on reflection, they would have to really do something like this, wouldn't they? I think in reality, like Wix, their main competitor at the present moment, or competitors, are these hosted solutions in e-commerce and in general website building, isn't it, John?
Yeah, and I think at the end, I think this could affect the page builder market. Say like your Beaver builders, your visual composers, those different sorts of things. I think in the end game, it will affect those because I think that WordPress core, they want to push it closer to something like Squarespace.
Yeah, definitely. I think we should go for a break, John, and then when we come back, we'll discuss this a little bit more.
You got it. We'll come back from the break in a minute, and we'll be talking more about the Gutenberg project, which is being rolled into WordPress core probably by the end of 2017. See you in a minute. We're coming back from the break, and we're continuing our discussion on Gutenberg, which is, as it exists right now, a plugin, but it is getting rolled into WordPress core in 4.0 by the end of the year.
I think another thing is it's going to break backward compatibility, and I think it's going to be one of the only that's quite a big move, isn't it, John?
Yeah, this is actually going to be the very first thing that's ever been rolled into WordPress core that will break backwards compatibility. And so as far as us as consultants, as people who build websites, web designers, we need to be experimenting with this on our own, using it and seeing how it affects sites. So one thing I want to point out, any sites that were created with the old method, like however you built it in the text editor, in the visual editor, that comes with WordPress, those will remain. Any new posts after this is rolled into core will be affected by Gutenberg. So the old posts will remain the same. Anything new will be created using this methodology. So I think we should be testing. Everybody that uses WordPress should be testing this and finding out so they can teach their clients how to use it once it does roll out.
But do you actually think it's going to actually break themes? If a theme that has been kept updated, I mean, the plugins, and just hasn't been left for like a year, 2 years with no updates or anything, which you do come across, unfortunately. But a theme that's been actively updated to some context, do you think it's still going to, I suppose it just depends on the coding quality, doesn't it, John?
Well, yeah, I really think it's going to depend. I would, because here's the thing, every website is a little bit different because you've got WordPress core underneath, but which version of WordPress core do you have? Hopefully you've got the most recent, but then your theme and your combination of plugins is going to be different from any other site. So yeah, I would say it just depends. I would presume that some of the more popular plugins that have a lot of downloads and they have active development teams, like Yoast SEO, like your those sorts of ones where you have a team behind them. I would presume that those ones are not going to break once Gutenberg rolls into core. Now, where I would be concerned is more the theme authors maybe that you might see on Theme Forest where they don't have a team, where it's a single author, or plugins where it's one person building a plugin in their spare time. That's where I would be more concerned.
Yeah, that's how I see it. I also thought I've been surprised at the amount of the growth in the page builders in a way, because I always thought it wasn't things like Beaver Builder, Elementor, and Divi 3. They were aimed. I always thought they were more aimed at the power user, kind of semi-professional graphic designer, WordPress consultant type than just your average small business owner. Do you think I might be right about that, or is it a much bigger audience?
Well, I'll tell you just from my personal observation and the people that I've run across, Beaver Builder and Elementor, Conductor, Visual Composer, those are more aimed toward people who build sites for other people for a living. Those are the tools that they choose. And I would say that something like Divi is aimed more toward people who want to do it themselves.
All right.
At least what I've seen.
No, you're more active in that side. Why do you any insights why that is?
I think people just search and they come across Divi, and it is something that they can wrap their head around, and it's it's just a theme. So I mean, they have a separate plugin now.
They do, don't they?
Yeah.
See, one of the things, folks, is that this is such a dynamic area of WordPress that the changes are coming thick and fast, and but with almost all three of these commercial products, they're in a bit of an arms race, aren't they, John?
Well, they're already behind when it comes to that. But again, I mean, this reminds me of when they introduced post formats and they were trying to compete with Tumblr, and then that kind of fell by the wayside. But I do think that this is a more existential threat to, I mean, not that they're hurting, they have a large market share, but I think if the goal is to grow it like further, then I think you have to hit it head on, the competitors that um, are taking up that market share. But really think about it. I mean, from a business perspective, this is not so much for .org. This is more for the .com,
Yeah.
WordPress.com side of the business than it is for the self-hosted. I think that that's just a side effect.
Yeah. The other thing, because I wrote a very long article about all this, folks, about Divi comparing the three leaders, and it's slightly out the scope of the initial part of this discussion, but the only thing about Divi, funny enough, was their actual pricing model. But on the other hand, elegant themes have been in the WordPress area for quite a period of time. I think over 4 or 5 years, haven't they, John?
Well, I'll tell you what, Elegant Themes has been around for a while, but if you Google WordPress themes, just WordPress themes, they're usually right up there, like one or two, like it's them and Theme Forest.
Yeah.
They have a hell of an SEO team, got to tell you that. So,
Well, they do write a lot of articles, don't they? But
they
the only concern I've had about Divi is their actual pricing model, because they offer a lifetime license that includes support and updates for the lifetime, and that hasn't panned out too well with other people in the WordPress ecosystem. Has it, John?
No, but I will tell you something. Elegant, and getting back to their pricing model, I know what you're saying. They had a lifetime theme. I actually have a subscription, like an annual subscription to them, because I think it's about 4 clients that have Elegant themes right now. Uh, but a lot of these older themes that they have are not really actively, updated. Like they're updated, but they're not really like
Yeah.
freshened up. Divi is really like where they're putting all their effort.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. But I am a little bit jittery when I see that, because in general, I think that's also been an ongoing discussion over the past months, that basic plugins and themes in the WordPress ecosystem are priced a bit too low, basically. And you've seen a number of plugin um, shops and increasing their prices, haven't you?
yeah, and there's been a lot of backlash about that. But I mean, most notably with WooCommerce, but also when Easy Digital Downloads increased their pricing, people were up in arms. But I think that's a good way to go, because I think, and I'm not saying that because I just want to see prices like go up, but I think that every business needs to be sustainable, and I think for too long people have maybe not considered, like, even the free plugins in the repository. Somebody has to be giving up their time to maintain those. So I think if you're building a business on top of stuff, the price of the plugin should be sustainable. And if you're using those plugins to build your own business or build a client business, the price needs to be reasonable but sustainable. I haven't seen anybody with prices that I think are too high. I don't think so at all. So
It's a difficult one, isn't it? I think maybe the way it was done with WooCommerce wasn't done. Woo, sorry, should get the name right now, shouldn't I?
woo.
Woo. Um, it wasn't done in the best way, was it, John? On reflection, would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, and we discussed this a little bit on last week's panel, for sure. But I think they could have told people, um, ahead of time, that part they messed up. But I think as far as like increasing the price, if that's what they need to do to make it make sense from a business perspective, I'm fine with that.
And I've got to be truthful.
And to clarify for the people at home, sorry to cut you off there, but
No,
it
no
wasn't
problem.
just it wasn't really a price increase. It was the discount that people were getting for renewing a plugin. Instead, say if you bought a plugin at $199, you'd renew it at $99, and that was just a thing that like a lot of plugins did in the WordPress community. I think it was just monkey see, monkey do. Like they're doing it, I'll do it too. And all it was is they just said, well, if you bought it at $199, you renew it each year, you pay $199. That's what people were getting up in arms about. So yeah,
Yeah, but funny enough, John, I totally disagree with that. Actually, I actually think, in general, I do actually believe that the initial purchase of themes and plugins are too cheap, right? Um, but I also think that there should be some discount for the next when you renew after like a year's period of time. Um, to encourage people to keep their plugins up to date. Um, I know, if they're running a proper business, blah, 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 they shouldn't even hesitate about that. But I think it does encourage people, if the site seems to be working okay, to skip renewing the plugins. But what is against my argument there, John, is that I read a piece on the Tavern that said even with the discounts, only it just mine it just I couldn't actually believe the statistic. And if I get a spare moment, I'm going to attempt to try and find if the sources
sure,
that came.
sure.
Well, they were saying that only 10 to 20% of people, even with the discount, renew,
Well,
which I found absolutely mind-boggling.
well, I will tell you why that is, Jonathan. Um, and maybe this is not as common in other, uh, maybe it's not as common in the Drupal world or the Joomla world, but it seems to be prevalent in the WordPress world. Um, there's a lot of people that get there, they'll hire somebody, they'll find a person, like maybe some college kid with a semester of experience somewhere, and they'll hire them to build their site, or maybe the boss's son or nephew or niece or whatever, and they'll build the site, and then that whatever that person will go away, and then the business owner is so busy in their business that they just never update the theme, they never update the plugins, and they have, because no one's there to tell them like, hey, you need to do this, or things can break or bad things can happen. But in any bigger business, people update that stuff. They have a budget for that. They have web consultants either on staff or advising them in a consultory position to keep their plugins updated. So I think a lot of it is because the easy barrier of entry with WordPress. A lot of people build sites but then fade out because, again, they have to go get a 9 to 5 because their rates are too low, or they just move on to different things, or
Yeah.
the business owner sets it up themselves, and then they never renew because they just don't know what they don't know. So thoughts, what are your thoughts on that?
No, that sounds totally in a lot of the cases, and in in a lot in unless you unless you need certain functionality, or you're always going to be limited by what you're going to be able to do with a hosted system. To that comes with the territory. That's the kind of Freudian bargain that you play with a hosted solution. But with Shopify and some of the others, it can be totally okay, can't it? As long as you understand. And a lot of those people, they'll be probably better off with a more up to date, more powerful version of WordPress.com, mightn't they?
Well, like I said, the one thing that WordPress.com doesn't have at this point is e-commerce. Though a lot of people suspect that that's coming sometime in the near future. But like you're saying, like if somebody's building an e-commerce store, I only recommend WooCommerce if they already have some sort of revenue either coming in through
Yeah.
physical sales through the front door, or some established online presence. And I'm with you in a lot of ways that if somebody has no proven revenue model, they're best to start with something like Shopify because the risk is a lot lower. They can just spend 25 or 30 bucks a month and see if they get business in the door. If they need a dedicated site that's like a dedicated shop that's built into their actual website and they have a proven revenue coming in the door, then yes, then they should go with something like WooCommerce or another e-commerce solution on WordPress.
Yeah, I think we need to wrap it up now, John. Well, I think it's been worth the discussion because I think with the change in the editor, it's going to be one of the most core fundamental changes that not developers. There's been some rapid other changes over the past year, isn't there? But they've touched more to the developer type. I think as a public-facing change, this is going to be one of the more dramatic changes that we've seen for the past 2 or 3 years. Would you agree with that, John?
No, I think it's going to be a dramatic change. I think it's going to be an ongoing change. I will tell you something, though, like a lot of people from the outside really do think that this is a good thing. I think it's a lot of people on the inside that think it's a bad thing. I do think it's moving a little fast, but they do need to do something. So I
Oh,
guess,
yeah, I totally agree with you. So,
yeah.
Go on, John, you wrap it up.
Okay, so if anyone is getting value from this show, we encourage you to go to iTunes, leave a review. Just open the podcast app, search for WP-Tonic or on Android, and go and leave a review. We'd love to hear from you. And with that, we're going to wrap up the show. You can find me at my website, which is lockdowndesign.com. You can follow me on Twitter, lockdown_, or hit up my Facebook page. Just search for Lockdown Design. Jonathan, how do we get a hold of you?
Oh, it's really simple, folks. Either on my Twitter feed at Jonathan Denwood, or you can email me at WP Tonic website. That's at Jonathan at WP-tonic.com. Or you can leave a remark on our Facebook page. That's it, really. And like what John said, if you're getting value from the podcast, leave us a comment, or even better, leave us a review on iTunes. That really does help the show, doesn't it, John?
Absolutely. It totally does. So there you go. For the WP Tonic posse in effect, we're saying peace out and get your dose.